A chance meeting that changed everything. Dominic Sterling stood at the back of the grand concert hall, his presence commanding even in the dim lighting. At 34, he had built an empire in commercial real estate that stretched across 3 continents. His tailored charcoal suit spoke of wealth and power, yet his steel-grey eyes held a coldness that kept most people at a comfortable distance. He had attended this charity fundraiser purely for business networking, expecting another tedious evening of forced smiles and empty conversations. The last thing he anticipated was being captivated by the delicate woman holding a violin on stage. Rosalind Chen, known simply as Rose to her friends, stood center stage with her instrument cradled lovingly against her shoulder. At 23, she possessed an ethereal beauty that seemed almost otherworldly under the spotlight. Her silky black hair was pulled into a classic bun, revealing a graceful neck and porcelain skin that seemed to glow. When she drew the bow across the strings, the haunting melody of Vivaldi's Four Seasons filled the hall, and every person in attendance fell silent, mesmerized by the pure emotion flowing through her music. Dominic felt something shift inside his chest. He had attended countless cultural events over the years, viewing them as obligations rather than pleasures. But watching Rose perform was different. Her eyes were closed as she played, her entire being focused on creating beauty through sound. There was an innocence and passion in her performance that awakened something dormant within him, something he thought had died along with his youthful idealism years ago. The performance that touched a frozen heart. The final note faded into silence. The audience erupted in thunderous applause. Rose opened her eyes, seemingly surprised by the overwhelming response, and a genuine smile spread across her delicate features. She bowed gracefully, her cheeks flushed with a mixture of pride and shyness. Dominic found himself applauding harder than he had in years, genuinely moved by what he had just witnessed. After the performance, guests mingled in the adjacent gallery, where champagne flowed freely and conversations buzzed around expensive artwork hanging on pristine white walls. Dominic navigated through the crowd with practiced ease, accepting congratulations on his recent business acquisition, while his eyes searched for the violinist who had so thoroughly captured his attention. He found her standing near a window overlooking the city lights, holding a glass of sparkling water and looking slightly overwhelmed by the social atmosphere. She had changed from her performance gown into a simple navy dress that somehow made her look even more approachable and lovely. Several people approached her with compliments, but Dominic noticed how she seemed uncomfortable with the attention, preferring to fade into the background rather than bask in her well-deserved praise. Dominic made his decision. He crossed the room with purposeful strides, ignoring several business associates who tried to catch his attention. When he reached Rose, she was alone for a moment, gazing out at the twinkling cityscape with an expression of quiet contemplation. Words that sparked an unexpected connection. "Your performance was extraordinary," Dominic said, his deep voice cutting through the ambient chatter. "I've attended hundreds of concerts, but I've never heard anyone play with such genuine emotion." Rose turned, startled by the sudden interruption. When her warm amber eyes met his intense grey gaze, Dominic felt that same electric sensation he had experienced during her performance. Up close, she was even more beautiful, with naturally rosy lips and a sprinkling of barely visible freckles across her nose that gave her an endearing quality. "Thank you so much," Rose replied softly, her voice like honey and wind chimes. "That means everything to me. Music is my whole world. It shows," Dominic said, surprising himself with the sincerity in his tone. "You weren't just playing notes. You were telling a story, sharing something deeply personal with everyone in that room." Rose's eyes widened slightly, clearly not expecting such an insightful observation from a stranger at a formal event. Most people don't understand that. They hear the technical skill, but miss the emotional truth behind it. "I understand more than you might think," Dominic replied, "though I'll admit, it's been a long time since I've allowed myself to feel anything deeply. Your music reminded me what that's like." A comfortable silence settled between them as they stood together, to people from completely different worlds finding an unexpected connection. Rose studied Dominic's face, noticing the way his stern features softened slightly when he looked at her, and the hint of loneliness that lurked behind his confident exterior. "I'm Rose," she said, extending her hand with a gentle smile. "Dominic Sterling," he replied, taking her delicate hand in his larger one. The simple touch sent warmth spreading through both of them, a physical manifestation of the connection they were beginning to forge. "Would you allow me to take you to dinner, Rose?" Dominic asked, the words escaping before his logical business mind could overthink them. "I'd very much like to continue our conversation in a quieter setting." Rose hesitated for only a moment, her intuition telling her that accepting this invitation would change her life in ways she couldn't yet imagine. But there was something in Dominic's eyes, a vulnerability hiding beneath the layers of wealth and success, that made her want to know him better. "I'd like that," she said softly, her answer sealing both their fates in that single moment of brave acceptance. A world of contrasts. 3 days later, Dominic arrived at the modest apartment building where Rose lived, driving a sleek black sedan that looked distinctly out of place in the neighborhood of aging brick structures and corner shops. He had specifically chosen a less ostentatious vehicle, sensing that Rose might be uncomfortable with excessive displays of wealth. When she emerged from the building, she wore a simple cream-colored blouse and flowing caramel skirt that made her look both elegant and approachable. Her hair hung loose around her shoulders in glossy waves, and she carried a small clutch purse that Dominic suspected contained everything she owned of value. "You look lovely," Dominic said as he opened the car door for her, noticing how her cheeks flushed at the compliment. "Thank you. I wasn't sure what to wear," Rose admitted, sliding into the passenger seat. "I've never been to dinner with someone like you before." "Someone like me?" Dominic asked as he settled into the driver's seat, genuinely curious about her perception. "Successful, powerful, someone who probably dines at 5-star restaurants every night," Rose said, her voice tinged with nervous honesty. Dominic smiled, the expression transforming his usually stern features into something warmer and more approachable. "The truth is, I usually eat takeout at my desk while reviewing contracts and financial reports. Tonight is special because I'm spending it with you, instead of taking her to an exclusive restaurant where they would be surrounded by pretentious diners and invasive photographers." Dominic drove them to a hidden gem he had discovered years ago, a family-owned Italian bistro tucked away on a quiet side street, where the owner greeted guests like old friends, and the aroma of fresh basil and simmering tomato sauce filled the air with welcoming warmth. Discovering each other's truth over plates of handmade pasta and glasses of deep red wine, Rose and Dominic talked for hours, their conversation flowing as naturally as a river finding its course. Rose told him about growing up as the daughter of immigrants who had sacrificed everything to give her music lessons, believing their daughter possessed a gift that deserved to be nurtured. She spoke of practicing violin for 8 hours a day, her fingers bleeding and her shoulders aching, driven by the desire to honor her parents' faith in her abilities. "They passed away 2 years ago in a house fire," Rose said quietly, her amber eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I was performing in another city that night. By the time I got home, there was nothing left but ashes and memories. The violin I play now was the only thing that survived because I had taken it with me." Dominic reached across the table and covered her small hand with his larger one, offering silent comfort. "I lost my parents too, when I was 25. A boating accident. They were celebrating their anniversary when the storm hit. I buried myself in work afterward, building my empire as a way to avoid dealing with the pain. Looking back, I realize I've been running from my emotions for nearly a decade." Rose turned her hand over, so their palms met, her fingers intertwining with his. "Maybe we were meant to find each other." To people who understand loss and are trying to find meaning again, maybe we were, Dominic agreed, his grey eyes locked on hers with an intensity that made Rose's heart race. A gradual transformation of the following weeks. Dominic and Rose became inseparable. He would finish his meetings early to attend her practice sessions, sitting in the back of the rehearsal hall and watching her pour her soul into each piece. Rose, in turn, began accompanying him to business dinners and charity events, her genuine kindness and lack of pretension winning over even his most cynical associates. Rose taught Dominic to slow down and appreciate the small moments that made life meaningful. They would walk through parks on Sunday mornings, feeding ducks and watching children play. She introduced him to her favorite bookstore, a cramped little shop where the owner knew every customer by name and could recommend the perfect story for any mood. They spent evenings cooking simple meals together in Rose's tiny kitchen, laughing when Dominic burned the rice or when Rose accidentally added salt instead of sugar to the dessert. Through Rose's eyes, Dominic rediscovered the joy of living other than merely existing. He found himself smiling more, laughing at silly jokes, and actually tasting his food instead of consuming it mindlessly. The perpetual tension in his shoulders began to ease, and colleagues noticed that he seemed more patient and understanding in business dealings. Dominic, for his part, supported Rose's musical career with genuine enthusiasm. He used his connections to arrange for her to audition with the city's prestigious symphony orchestra, but made sure she earned the position based purely on her extraordinary talent. When she was accepted as their newest violinist, Rose cried tears of joy in his arms, overwhelmed that her dreams were finally becoming reality. The question that changed everything 3 months after their first dinner. Dominic took Rose to the botanical gardens on a perfect spring afternoon. The air was filled with the scent of blooming flowers, and butterflies danced between colorful petals. He led her to a secluded rose garden where hundreds of varieties created a breathtaking tapestry of reds, pinks, yellows, and whites. "This is beautiful," Rose breathed, spinning slowly to take in the magnificent display surrounding them. "Not nearly as beautiful as you," Dominic said, his voice rough with emotion. Rose turned to find him on one knee, holding a velvet box containing an elegant ring. The diamond was substantial, but not ostentatious, set in platinum with smaller stones creating a delicate floral pattern that perfectly suited Rose's understated elegance. "Rose Chen," Dominic began, his usually confident voice trembling slightly. "Before I met you, I was successful but empty. You've shown me that true wealth isn't measured in buildings or bank accounts, but in moments of genuine connection and joy. You've thawed my frozen heart and taught me how to feel again. Will you marry me and spend your life helping me be a better man?" Tears streamed down Rose's face as she nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, Dominic, yes, with all my heart." He slipped the ring onto her finger and stood, pulling her into his arms for a kiss that sealed their promise to each other. They stood together in the rose garden, two souls who had found in each other the missing piece that made them whole. The decision to wait that evening, as they celebrated their engagement over champagne in Dominic's penthouse, their kisses grew increasingly passionate. Dominic's hands tangled in Rose's silky hair while she pressed herself against him, both of them trembling with desire. But when things threatened to progress further, Rose gently pulled back, her cheeks flushed and her breathing ragged. "I want to wait," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I've never been with anyone before, and I want our first time to be on our wedding night. When I'm truly your wife." Dominic cupped her face tenderly, his grey eyes dark with barely restrained passion, but also deep respect. "Are you certain? We don't have to wait if you're ready." "I'm certain," Rose confirmed, her amber eyes shining with love and anticipation. "I want everything with you to be special and meaningful. Can you wait for me?" "I would wait forever for you," Dominic promised, kissing her forehead gently. "Our wedding night will be worth the anticipation." Neither of them knew just how profoundly true those words would prove to be, or how Rose's whispered confession on that night would completely shatter Dominic's carefully maintained control and transform them both forever. A day of perfect beauty 6 months later. On a crisp autumn morning, Dominic stood at the altar of an elegant chapel surrounded by amber and gold leaves that nature had painted in celebration of the season. Sunlight streamed through stained glass windows, casting rainbow patterns across polished wooden pews filled with friends, family, and colleagues. His charcoal grey suit was perfectly tailored, but his hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his tie for the 100th time. Nervous, asked his best friend and business partner, Julian, who stood beside him as best man. Terrified, Dominic admitted honestly, "What if I'm not good enough for her? What if I disappoint her?" Julian clapped him on the shoulder reassuringly. "That woman loves you more than anything in this world. Just be yourself." The man she fell in love with. The orchestra began playing, and everyone rose to their feet. When the doors opened to reveal Rose standing at the entrance, Dominic felt his breath catch in his throat. She looked like an angel descended from heaven, her wedding gown a masterpiece of ivory silk and delicate lace that flowed around her like liquid moonlight. Her black hair was swept up in an intricate style with tiny white roses woven throughout, and a sheer veil framed her radiant face. But it was her expression that nearly brought Dominic to his knees. Rose's amber eyes were locked on his with such love, such trust, such complete devotion, that he felt unworthy of such a precious gift. She glided down the aisle toward him, her smile growing wider with each step that brought them closer to becoming one. Sacred vows and binding promise. One. Rose reached the altar and placed her trembling hand in his steady one. Dominic squeezed gently, silently promising to protect and cherish her for all their remaining days. The ceremony proceeded in a blur of beautiful words and sacred promises. When it came time for their personal vows, Dominic's voice was thick with emotion. "Rose, you entered my life like music enters silence, transforming everything with your presence. I was a man who had forgotten how to feel, and you reminded me that the greatest treasures cannot be bought or sold. You are my heart, my home, my reason for existing. I promise to spend every day of our lives together proving myself worthy of your love." Rose's tears fell freely as she responded with her own vows. "Dominic, you saw worth in me when I felt invisible to the world. You supported my dreams while teaching me that I deserved happiness and success. You are my strength, my shelter, my greatest blessing. I promise to love you with every breath I take, to stand beside you through all life's challenges, and to be yours completely and forever." When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife and invited Dominic to kiss his bride, he lifted Rose's veil with reverent care. Their kiss was tender, yet filled with barely restrained passion, a preview of the intimacy they would finally share later that night. The guests erupted in applause and celebration, but Dominic and Rose were lost in their own world, aware only of each other. Building anticipation's reception was held at Dominic's most exclusive hotel, where he had transformed the ballroom into an autumn wonderland. Golden lights twinkled like stars overhead, and arrangements of burgundy roses and amber chrysanthemums adorned every table. They danced their first dance as husband and wife to a live orchestra, playing the same Vivaldi piece Rose had performed the night they met. "I can hardly wait to be alone with you," Rose whispered against Dominic's ear as they swayed together, her body pressed intimately against his. "Soon," Dominic promised, his voice rough with desire. "Very soon, Mrs. Sterling." Every moment of the reception felt like sweet torture. Dominic was hyper-aware of Rose's every movement, the way her wedding gown clung to her curves, the flush of excitement on her cheeks, the way she kept glancing at him with anticipation sparkling in her amber eyes. He had waited 6 months for this night, controlling his desire through sheer willpower and respect for Rose's wishes. But now, knowing that in just a few hours she would finally be his in every way, his carefully maintained restraint was crumbling with each passing minute. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of toasts and celebrations and well wishes, they were able to slip away. Dominic had arranged for them to spend their wedding night in the penthouse suite of his flagship hotel, a luxurious space he had personally decorated for this special occasion. The moment of truth in the elevator ascending to their suite. The tension between them was so intense that Dominic could barely breathe. Rose stood beside him, her hand clasped tightly in his, her chest rising and falling rapidly with nervous excitement. "Are you scared?" Dominic asked gently, concerned that she might be having second thoughts. "No," Rose answered honestly, turning to look directly into his grey eyes. "I've been dreaming about this moment for months. I trust you completely. When the elevator doors opened, Dominic swept Rose into his arms and carried her across the threshold of their suite. She gasped in delight at the romantic scene he had created. Thousands of rose petals covered the floor in a fragrant carpet of red and white. Candles flickered throughout the space, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Soft music played from hidden speakers, creating an atmosphere of pure romance. Dominic set Rose down gently in the center of the room, his hands lingering on her waist. They stood facing each other, both trembling with anticipation and emotion. The moment they had waited for had finally arrived, and suddenly both felt almost shy despite their deep love and desire. "You're shaking," Rose observed softly, reaching up to cup Dominic's face. "I've never wanted anything or anyone as much as I want you right now," Dominic admitted, his voice raw with honesty. "I'm afraid I'll lose control and rush things. I want this to be perfect for you." Rose stood on her tiptoes and kissed him tenderly. "It will be perfect because we're together. I'm ready, Dominic. I'm ready to give you all of me." Dominic kissed her back, deeper this time, pouring months of restrained passion into the embrace. His hands moved to the tiny buttons running down the back of her wedding gown, unfastening them with surprising gentleness given how desperately he wanted her. The confession that changed everything as her dress began to slip from her shoulders. Rose pulled back slightly, her amber eyes locked intensely on his grey ones. What she said next would forever be etched in Dominic's memory. The words that finally shattered his iron control completely. "I belong to you completely," Rose whispered, her voice trembling with emotion and desire. "My body, my heart, my soul. Everything I am is yours, Dominic. Make me yours forever." Those words ignited something primal within Dominic. All the restraint, all the careful control he had maintained for 6 months, evaporated in an instant. He lifted Rose into his arms and carried her to their bed, laying her down with reverent care on the silk sheet scattered with rose petals. "You have no idea what you do to me," Dominic said, his voice rough as he gazed down at his beautiful bride. "You've owned my heart since the moment I heard you play. Now I'm going to show you just how deeply I love you." That night, Dominic worshipped Rose with a passion and tenderness that exceeded her wildest dreams. He was patient and gentle, guiding her through every new sensation with loving care. Rose gave him her innocence with complete trust, and in return, Dominic gave her pleasure beyond anything she had imagined possible. Their wedding night was everything they had dreamed it would be and so much more. Two souls became one, bound together not just by legal vows, but by the deepest physical and emotional intimacy two people could share. From a shy bride and a guarded billionaire, they transformed into passionate lovers and devoted partners. A love that conquered, a la stormlight, began creeping through the windows hours later. They lay tangled together in the silk sheets, exhausted and utterly content. Rose rested her head on Dominic's chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, while his fingers traced gentle patterns on her bare shoulder. "I love you so much it almost hurts," Dominic whispered into her hair. "You've given me everything I never knew I was missing." "I love you too," Rose murmured sleepily, pressing a kiss over his heart. "Thank you for waiting for me, for making tonight so perfect, for loving me the way you do." Their story was just beginning, but already they knew they had found something rare and precious. A love built on mutual respect, genuine connection, and the courage to be vulnerable with each other. They had proven that true intimacy couldn't be rushed or forced, that sometimes the most meaningful experiences were worth waiting for, and that when two hearts truly belonged together, the resulting bond was unbreakable. As they drifted off to sleep in each other's arms, both Dominic and Rose knew that whatever challenges life brought them, they would face them together. Their love had transformed them both, teaching a cold-hearted billionaire to feel again and showing a shy violinist that she deserved to be cherished. Together, they had created a love story for the ages, one that would inspire them through all their years together. And it all began with an unexpected encounter, a brave first date, and a wedding night promise that melted even the coldest heart completely.